People love her as a Hollywood legend, a Broadway star, and the voice that made songs memorable for millions of people. She had a beautiful smile, but she kept quiet for more than 60 years. She kept this very important secret from everyone, even as the whole world cheered. Julie Andrews finally breaks the silence at age 89, and telling the truth about what happened when the gift that defined her soul was taken away. The terrible mistake in surgery that took away her golden voice for good. The hidden parts of her marriage to Blake Edwards that were filled with love and unspoken pain, and the heartbreaking confession about what she regrets the most. You will find out the emotional truth she kept to herself for decades in this movie. Before we start, if Julie Andrews has ever touched your heart, a simple like would be a lovely way to honor her lasting gift. When she was young, she lost a lot of loved ones, and the people who were supposed to protect her wound her the most. This marked every note she would sing later on. Julie Andrews was born Julia Elizabeth Wells in Walton-on-Thames in 1935. As a child, she didn't come into the world in peace or happiness, but in the midst of chaos caused by World War II and family fights. She was very sure for the first 14 years that Edward Charles Wells, the kind schoolteacher she called Dad, was really her father. And in his kindness, she found a thin layer of safety. But when she was only 14, her mother Barbara told her something as terrible as lightning in 1950, that fragile world was broken forever. He had an affair with Julie, so she wasn't his kid. And with those words, she lost her whole personality. Every childhood memory tainted by secret, every hug turned into a heartbreaking lie. The lie was more than just nasty. It broke her soul in a way that would last her whole life. She carried the hurt with or even on her best days. But that news was only one part of the tragedy. Years ago, in the midst of the bombings and destruction of wartime London, her parents' marriage fell apart. Julie was sent to live with her mother and new husband, vaudeville performer Ted Andrews, who did not offer any safety. In the poor areas of London after the war, where they lived, it was always cold, hungry, and hopeless, and there was no love. Barbara was distant and unstable because she was drunk and lost in her own problems. Even though Ted could hear how beautiful her singing was, he became the personification of fear in her young life. Later, Julie would remember how, when he was drunk, he crossed lines that no child should ever have to face. She would remember events that happened twice but kept coming back to her like cracks in glass. From then on, she locked the door to her bedroom every night, not for safety reasons, but to keep herself safe. She was wide awake in the dark and holding her breath at every sound of the floors moving. She was scared that the shadow outside her door would open it. It was a sad, cruel, and lonely truth that she hid deep in silence for decades. Still, something magical kept going in that scary and confusing world. Her voice was clear, sharp, and almost angelic. It wasn't just a skill, it was her only way of staying alive, the thing that kept her together when everything else was falling apart. To Julie, people didn't respect her singing skills. She used them as a shield, an escape, and the only way she could stay alive in a world that seemed set on erasing her. It was a terrible irony. Ted, the same man who hurt her as a child, also pushed her to act, putting her on stage where the cheers would temporarily drown out the sounds of her pain. Julie's rise did not start with cheers or happiness. At first, it was a fight against everything that tried to break it. Her. Every note came from pain, and every act was a cry for help that was hidden as art. In spite of everything, she kept going. She sang against all pains. She didn't just happen to hear her voice. It came out of her like a desperate cry turned into a song. It was a lifeline pulled from the wreckage of her youth when fear, silence, and secrecy were threatening to swallow her up. In the late 1940s, when most 10-year-olds played carelessly in the streets, Julie Andrews was already struggling to stay alive. She found that the sound coming from deep inside her chest was the only place she was safe. She didn't just have a good voice. It was a cruel riddle from heaven itself, clear and unbelievably strong for such a small child, reflecting both the pain of wounds she couldn't talk about and the strength of a spirit that wouldn't break. The disaster was almost too much to bear. Ted Andrews, her stepfather, was scary when she was young, but he was also the one who saw this miracle inside her, pushing her toward a road where applause would replace love. The stage would be the only place where no secret could keep her cool. When she was 13, Julie started going to the Cohn Ripman School in 1948. Today it is called the Tring Park School for the Performing Arts, but it was Madame Lillian Stiles Allen, a famous singer whom Julie would later call her third mother, who helped her change for the better. During those years, she was the only person who gave her safety and order at the same time, who expected perfection while still making her feel safe. Her real family could never do that. Styles Allen drilled her in cold, gas-lit rooms, doing scales over and over again until her body hurt. He told her, "The amateur works until he gets it right. They work hard until they can't do anything wrong." Julie took those words in as if her life depended on them. When she was 11, she took the lonely train from London to Leeds with only a small lunch in her pocket because she didn't have any money for anything else. Her eyes were only on the sheet music in her lap as other kids laughed and played. The cold made her breath fog up. Years later, she admitted that even her jokes about how sharp her voice was and how it could call dogs were a mask. They hid the sad truth that every not does she played was less about art and more about staying alive. It was a thin wall she built to keep the shadows away. Julie first performed on stage at the London Hippodrome in 1947 when she was only 12 years old. She was in the revue Starlight Roof and sang the harsh aria Je suis Titania from Mignon. The sound that came out of her tiny body seemed too weak to contain it. It left grown men speechless and women crying as if they had seen something magical. It wasn't a kid pretending to be an adult. It was a hurt child. Her pain turned her voice into something eerie and otherworldly, above all of them. In November 1948, when she was 13, she was called to the Royal Command variety performance at the London Palladium. There, she became the youngest soloist ever to perform on that historic stage in front of King George VI and Queen Elizabeth. Her voice soared above the hall, but her heart held secrets too heavy for her age, secrets that no one in the royal audience could ever guess. These weren't shy first steps. They were huge, terrifying jumps into a future that seemed to have already been planned. Even though she had won, her calmness was scary, like she knew how quickly everything could be taken away. During her early teens, she sang in plays, on BBC radio, and in pantomimes. Each act was done with the skill of an artist who was many years older. Every word was marked with the sad knowledge that praise wasn't love, but a replacement for the love she hadn't been given at home. With every standing ovation, she wasn't just building a business. She was also building armor, a persona to stand up to the cruel people who had tried to silence her. The world admired a genius, but behind every bow and curtain call was a little girl who used to lock her bedroom door out of fear. Now she was in the spotlight, returning her power with her voice, which no one could ever take away. She may have come into the world with wounds that would have hurt anyone, but Julie Andrews wouldn't let those cuts hold her down. She turned them into fuel for greatness and built a career that shone in the sun while carrying the weight of everything she had been through. It was never easy or smooth for her to rise. It was a hard climb marked by rejection, sacrifice, and a strong belief in her voice, which was the only tool she could really trust. In 1954, when she was only 19, she left the safety of England and crossed the Atlantic with only her courage and raw ability. Her American debut was in The Boyfriend on Broadway. Critics were blown away by her soprano's crystal-clear sound and the magnetic love she gave off that night. Praise that won her the Theatre World Award and made her seem like more than just a one-off. She was a big deal and would become a star. This was just the beginning of many tests that would come her way and see how strong she was. My Fair Lady, which came out in 1956, was a huge task. A young British newcomer wasn't thought to be able to successfully play Eliza Doolittle by many, but Julie shut up all of her critics. She changed from a rough-and-tumble flower girl to a well-behaved lady of society every night in front of their eyes. With a performance that was so bright and full of both laughter and sadness, the show ran for over 20,700 performances, making her the undisputed crown jewel of Broadway. But just as Hollywood called, fate dealt the cruelest hit. It was Audrey Hepburn who played Julie in the movie after she had played the part for years. And Julie was thrown away like she never existed. In later years, she said that the wound was too deep for any applause to heal, and her dream seemed to fall apart in front of her for a moment. But fate had been looking. Walt Disney saw how talented she was and was so sure of her talent that he went to meet her and offered her the part of Mary Poppins. He even put off filming until she recovered from giving birth to her daughter Emma in late 1962. Julie was still upset about how unfair My Fair Lady was, so she hesitated. But when she finally said yes, it felt like the whole world was pulling her up. When Mary Poppins came out in 1964, it got a lot of praise. Her performance was a perfect mix of magic and painful humanity that spoke to a lot of people. When her name was called for Best Actress at the Academy Awards, she beat Audrey Hepburn. It was a moment of beautiful justice that felt like it was written by fate. But she didn't stop to enjoy being righted. The next year, in 1965, she played Maria von Trapp in The Sound of Music, which would become her most famous part. The world saw her dancing in the Austrian mountains with a big smile on her face, but the truth was very bad. After each take, the downdraft from the chopper beat her up, leaving her wet, bruised, and worn out. She never said anything bad. She put up with everything because she knew what was at risk. The movie made Julie more than just a star. It went on to make over $286 million at the box office and win 5 Academy Awards. It also became a part of generations' cultural memory. She became a worldwide image of happiness, grace, and strength. Even in her golden years, she was responsible and never splurged. She saved wisely and put her money into real estate, buying her first home in London and then a small vacation home in California. Instead of going after luxury, she built a plan for her family's future, brick by brick. With her second husband, director Blake Edwards, she built not only a creative empire, but also a home. They got through his illness and depression together and weathered the storms of Hollywood, showing that real success isn't just about fame, but also about being able to work through hard times as a team. Still, Julie remembered being a scared girl who locked her bedroom door to stay safe, even when she was winning Oscars and getting praise from millions.